I'll be over here, because usually we'll bring up a question and I'll act silly and the guest will ask a legitimate question and then Om will tell us what we need.
Sounds completely accurate.
That's basically how we
Brian
roll.
will spew out some nonsense and Om will go, this is what Brian really means.
There you go.
Translator.
There you
Just
go.
let me translate the Brian
You
speak.
just contextualize our relationship. All right, today on the Agile Podcast,
Oh, God.
got Caurie Waddell. It's Caurie. I want to start with the one that gets under your skin the most. That's what I want. I told you a story before we started. We had a culture where we only hire rock stars, and we had a bunch of people that were like team leads or more senior people that were on teams that would basically claim everyone's accomplishments as their own, or hire up people in the organization that would claim entire departments worth of accomplishments, which is absolutely ludicrous for anyone who knows how the work is done. Because I'm like, how are you going to get away with, I released 4 teams worth of work and I did that. They couldn't have done it without me. Yeah, they probably could have done it without you. They probably did do it without you, actually.
Yeah,
That's more
nobody knows
accurate.
people like that, do they? They don't exist, surely.
Smartest person in the room. Smartest person in the room. That was my takeaway, is if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You need to get out of the room. Go find yourself a better room. I'm rambling.
Always.
I'll cut all this out. I don't.
So the topic is Rockstar versus collaborative.
Rockstars versus collaborators. It was either the culture allows either or, like does not allow one or the other. Like this should be vetted out in the interview process,
Hopefully.
or hopefully, right, yeah, or you have the culture where they don't care. They just want to like get back on the line and punch me out some cogs in the machine.
It's hard to vet that out in the interview usually, though, right? Because they'll tell you what they want you to hear. But, oftentimes the heroes, they'll come in and kind of take over because of 2 reasons. I think either they think they know more than the others do, which is not always true. And the other is perhaps they feel threatened by others. And that happens sometimes. They don't know what the others know, so they're like, I'm just going to go in and establish my domain. It's that whole line pride thing.
I think in that interview process and just speaking with individuals, you can get a sense for, are they collaborative or are they about themselves and continuing to push themselves forward? It's generally in the way they speak. I did this. But when they start talking about my team and myself and my colleagues, you start to get a sense that they actually appreciate the others and their input. And just having rock stars, even just one rock star on a team, can make it so toxic because everyone else is doing backhand deals to eliminate that person from their business. I've been on teams like that where we tried to exclude them knowing that they were going to take credit for it or steamroll or say they were going to do everything that they were going to do. And then the rest of us were there just trying to pick up the slack and all the pieces for them. It's great to have members that have rock star attributes, but I don't like using the term of rock star.
Yeah. I was in a program once where the equivalent of the chief PO went and got their favorite rock star lead developer from outside the program and brought them into the program to kind of like help them better work with the develop. Their idea was like this person worked very well on the other programs that I was at before, and now that I'm on this new program, they can help me better interact and pull my deadlines in and save all my projects. So they specifically went and got this person. And when I joined the program, of course, they weren't delivering anything, right? So it was still dysfunctional. I described this very recently to someone. I was like, in those types of, air quotes, those types of organizations, there's this cone. I don't know, where's the camera? There it is. Like for the people listening, I'm just doing my hands like I'm taking off at a plane, like I'm 5 years old. I need to remember to leave that in the editing. Like I'm narrating my actions, but they're silly actions. They're ridiculous. I was like, there's this cone in like project management where at the start of the project, the heat is off. So everyone's chilled out, you got plenty of time, and everyone's cooled down. And then the closer you get to the deadline, closer and closer, the cone goes bigger and bigger, and the stress gets bigger and bigger, and everyone gets like nerves start fraying, and deadlines get tighter, and everybody's stressed out. And then you hit the deadline, the deployment goes out, and then it all resets right back to the beginning of the cone again. And then you just build to the end, and then boom, reset. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to be on that roller coaster. I don't remember who I was talking to. I was like, I'm trying to find an organization where I don't need to ride that roller coaster anymore because I'm kind of sick of it. But this guy, they brought this guy in, and I pushed him into a PO role because the PO kept continually putting him between the teams and the PO. So I was like, why don't you stay up here as a chief PO and you delegate the PO responsibilities to this technical guy that you got outside the program and just make him the PO? Because the PO would never go and actually talk to the team members. He would talk to this technical guy, and the technical guy would go to basically relay to the team. And I'm like, hey, why not make him the PO? And then he can be involved in all the business decisions. And it's a win-win for everybody, because then the technical team can still do technical stuff. He can direct the technical team, which is kind of what you're forcing him to do anyway. And on paper, I, as a Scrum Master, what a great time, on that project, I was like, I get to not have a bunch of high-level stakeholders that really shouldn't be in my Scrum-level events. We can have the proper people in it. Like, everything will improve. This is a win for everybody. That's how I pitched it. Really what happened was, because I did that and forced this guy into the PO role, it kind of degraded his relationship with the fear-based management above him. That nobody would have succeeded. I just want to state that clearly. Yeah.
Yes, agreed.
Nobody
in
would
that
have succeeded.
situation, no one would have succeeded. Yep.
But the management idea that I can go get a, air quotes, rock star from outside of my program, bring him into my program, and he will fix everything just by gracing us with his princely presence or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what the thinking was.
Well, yeah, but if you bring a rock star in, that just means that maybe you get the vision that that person is doing it, but they're not, and or they're smoke and mirrors. Yeah, we're doing great. Or the team is still doing the exact same work that they did before, just as good, but that person is taking credit for it. So you don't know what's really going on behind the rock star.
Yep, and the team gets demoralized in that situation,
Absolutely.
right? Because they know they're doing the work they were doing before, and now someone else is taking the credit.
Yep. Bye, team.
Yeah.
See them all trickle away. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what happened in that environment. It was the team was doing the work, and the team was capable of planning and performing and testing and verifying the work was done properly. But you just had all this management interference. I read the second Deming book very recently, mm-hmm. and one of the things he references was management interference. When management doesn't trust to distribute the authority to the teams, they have to keep interfering in the teams to feel like they are doing something. Right. They think that if they were to truly just to delegate their authorita to the teams, they wouldn't have any justification of what their job is.
Yeah, and there's a sense of them losing power too, right? Because they have power,
right,
exerting that authority over the team.
Yeah.
And yet one of the Scrum Masters that is out of the States, he said, oh, imagine that. During the week of Thanksgiving, everything went fine. The team did all the work. They did it without error. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. Why? He's like, well, why don't you guess? No one was here to bother them. So imagine that. Things happen when you let the team just take care of it themselves.
There. We can't have any of that positive attitude and collaboration. That's you're looking for trouble from HR there. You're going to go HR to pull your file. I skipped to the subject of management interference because mm-hmm. that's something that you get. Well, we dealt with that a lot. I probably dealt with it more than you dealt with it. But yeah. The management will come in and like try to change your teams around or try to add. Oh, we don't need this tester on that team. I want him over here on this team or whatever. Like you're going to any Scrum Master is probably going to deal with that at some point.
Well, I think you need to classify the interference and the type and the level. So you dealt with disruption, severe disruption that was not helpful and not collaborative. I dealt with a different type of interference, was what's going wrong? What can I do to fix it? You all come and tell me how we can work together to get this back on track. So my interference was extremely helpful. Mm-hmm. Yours, unfortunately, was quite the opposite.
I don't tend to think of interference as helpful, though.
Yes, I understand. But interference is coming in and stopping the play and how things are going.
Yeah.
So there could be a sense of helpful interference.
Interference. I see what you're saying.
Is that an intervention?
Yeah, I guess you'd say intervention. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I'm actually
Google the dictionary. What does Merriam-Webster say?
on
for the definition of interference. Is it always negative?
Om's got a laptop. He can
Do
figure
it, Om.
I could
Pull it
do
up when you're
can't.
editing. Pull it up on screen.
Well, the dictionary is not very helpful. It says the action of interfering or the process of being interfered with. It's kind of like a necessary evil. You're not going to be able to avoid it, right? So you just have to deal with it the best you can.
Well,
your
I mean,
shield.
I don't know. Your experience may have been different than mine, but I've had HR come down, or sometimes HR, but sometimes like somebody from finance will come down and be like, I can't pay for all of your QA resources. You got to cut 2 people. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what do you mean I got to cut 2 people? Like, where did this come from? It's because in that instance, I do have to say is because we had the old school, once a year budgeting kind of when the CapEx is the other one. I can't remember one of them. Well, I don't remember.
OPEX is the other one. Yeah.
What's the temporary one? The one that's kind of flexes a year, not the one that's set at the beginning of the year.
That's the OPEX.
Is that OPEX?
Yeah. I don't
Anyway,
know
like basically you pay for your contractors out of your OPEX. And they'd be like, okay, we're moving your OPEX to another department and letting them use that money because they need to buy some switches or something. Whatever. It was always a stupid excuse like that.
Yeah.
Got to buy some switches. I have a person sitting in a chair over here doing a critical business role. Oh, no, you got to get rid of that. And so now management's interfering with your teams. Air quotes management. You want to jump to this fighting bad agile?
My thoughts really were all of us go into organizations where they're practicing varying levels of agile. And so fighting bad agile is about us going in and trying to do the right thing and basically swimming upstream because they're just so set in their ways.
Or deciding which battles to fight.
And that's some of the things we actually end up doing is thinking, you can't win them all, right? So
Absolutely.
so that's where I was like fighting bad agile. What do we do going in there and what do we not do?
You pick your battles? Is that this topic is disguised? Pick your battles?
That's one option, I guess. The other option, which
or how do you
do
what do you know? When do you know if it's bad or good? Like,
Well,
how do you?
signs,
how do you not identify?
That is true because there might be some agile coaches out there who may or may not have a certain have a certain attitude,
a certain idea.
Who may be like, oh, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as bad agile. There's just what is, and who are you to judge what's good and bad, right?
Yeah.
Every agile implementation is unique.
Yeah, they're the ones that have a long contract, right? Let them find their own way.
Yeah.
Also, they're here to sell you their version of.
Of course.
And then you come in and then you get called the purist.
Ooh.
Oh, the P word.
Ooh.
How
It's a 4-letter word right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Except not 4 letters.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like most of us have to temper our stance when we go in based on what we encounter, right? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes going in, you look at what they're doing initially before you change anything, and you go, oh, geez, I've really got an uphill battle here. And so one option is to pick your battles, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other option is to look at it and go, this was a bad mistake. I'm out of here, right? Just throw in the towel.
I made that once or twice, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think there are some other avenues you could pursue there, find some alliances and see if there's anybody doing remotely anything that's agile. But I think that applies even in companies and organizations that are not necessarily doing bad agile, but they're just not doing great agile, and there's still room for improvement. Mm-hmm. So to your point about going in and saying, I'm going to do everything by the book, I don't think that will work in most cases, because the book doesn't encounter situational things, which what we kind of run into. Yeah. You have to flex your stance and go, yeah, the book says that, but here I need to do this first.
Yeah.
Get my team to this level, and then I'll work on the next level.
Yeah. I brought that up a bunch of times with different people. Is the book, air quotes the book, meaning the Scrum Guide or IC Agile trainings or the different things. Like usually they don't dig to the depths that you need to go to make real change in organizations or to identify real problems, not just sitting around solving symptoms. A lot of the times that we talk about the management and the budgeting and stuff like that, like there's where the real problems are coming from. If you go through and you get your CSM or whatever, you are not prepared to tackle the deep-rooted... Yeah, right.
I have an idea of how it should be at a team level, but as all of us know, it's very rare that you have a team that is the only team that's running Agile. You have a skilled environment, you have the management that wants metrics, you have the team that has no idea what they're doing, and then it's a different environment across all of the teams. Yeah. So then you might have a team that's doing good Agile, but it's not across all of them, And I was just talking with the Scrum Master where in every retro, the team doesn't know what to bring up. They don't know what to bring as areas of improvement because they have no idea what a good Agile team looks like. So they're like, hey, we're doing great. We're doing awesome. And, from her perspective, she's like, but you're not, but they don't know it because they haven't seen it. So it's not at the fault of these organizations that are like, okay, you're doing bad Agile, because for them, it might be immensely better from where they were when we come in and we're like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah, I guess you're saying that there's degrees. And, in most organizations, they are where they are despite their kind of inertia, their internal struggles, right? But they don't see where they can be.
Right.
This is why they
can't
you in.
see the sunset on the horizon. They're like, this is where we could be. They're like, yeah, but we made it from the beach to the crashing waves. Now we have no idea where to go from here.
Right. Yeah, and that's where I think an Agile coach would come in and say, let me show you where you could be going and let me take you there, right? And show a plan and execute on that plan. But going back to the earlier point, you will not do that if you're a purist.
Yeah, you can't accept, you have to accept that there are varying levels. There is no, this is exactly what you should do prescription. Like you said, it does not go into this is X, Y, Z, this is how you should do it, and this is how you succeed. You have to understand, well, you could do these few things over here. Let's throw these things under the rug because they're not problems right now. They might be down the road, but I'm not touching them. Yeah. And then just kind of fight the fights that you can have an impact on.
We had talked about meeting them where they are.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of getting there.
Wait. And I was listening to another podcast where they were like, forget that, throw that out the window, because if you meet them there, then you're making small incremental changes, where if you just tear it all apart and start it where it should, you skip all of that nonsense and you just get right to a level where you probably would have taken 3 years to get to. So I see both sides, but every team is going to be, every team organization is going to be a different
absolutely
situation.
I wrote down an Agile team on an island when you were talking, because you were like, they got this one Agile team. They don't really have exposure to anything. If you're an Agile team and you're plugged into a scaled program and you're partnered with a bunch of other teams, then you can kind of see what the other teams are doing. Like, this is in my brain, this is the advantage of the distributed model, where you're not all managed by one central PMO that's telling you how to do things. You're fed by product management that is just telling you what to do, and then whether they can get into the details of how to do it or understand the details, or some business people that can't even understand the details depending on how complex your program is. What should be the advantage of a distributed model rather than the authoritarian type of alternative should be the teams that are having the most success. The other teams should be kind of flocking to them and be like, what are you guys doing? How did you figure that out? How did you solve that? And they should be free to go between the teams, the team members between the teams. It's a lot of places I see the team members kind of are like, they got the little blinders on, everything except for the computer in front of them. And then they need the Scrum Master kind of to help them to get to wherever they're supposed to go. But the Scrum Master can do a lot, especially if you're on that little island where everyone's just got blinders on, or if or worse, if your organization really encourages, like, don't go wasting that other team's time. Don't go talking to them. What are you going over there for? That's another program. That's another cost center. I'm not paying you to blah, 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 blah. You've heard that. Like, I just hit on one for you, because you were like, whoa, I'm not paying you to
I worked with a few of those myself, yes.
Yeah, it's called collaboration.
It's called collaboration. Yeah, well, that's kind of like, that's why I wrote that other sticky I threw away, and that totally is on the floor over there. About collaboration is like, you need to hire people in that kind of understand that. Otherwise, this goes back to our changing the culture thing. Otherwise, like, you need to either find the people that already understand how to collaborate, kind of elevate them up so they start training people, or you need to go seek out people to help run your teams, air quotes, be the senior people that kind of, helm your teams. I'm trying not to say run in any way, shape, or form. I'm trying not to
lead.
Command control. Yeah, lead.
Support.
Servant leader.
Yeah, oftentimes those people that you just mentioned are middle managers that kind of grew up with a certain way of working,
Yeah.
and they have the hardest time of this.
Yeah,
Right?
adjusting.
They're the ones that you hear from that say, that's another team, leave them alone.
Yeah.
Be utilized on your own team.
I was at a company once where I was a team lead for anecdotal purposes. And they were, air quotes, going agile. And it pretty much started with a development manager coming in and be like, we're agile now. We're not going to write requirements anymore. And we're not going to do documentation. We're going to fire our documentation guy. And that was it, because he heard that in agile you don't have to write documentation.
Where did you hear that?
Do that's development. Like they were like, we don't want to spend time on this anymore. This agile stuff is made for developers, so we're just going to call the shots. And that was what, that's the way they implemented it. So all of the team leads and managers in the organization who did not go through any training classes or any courses, or they received no training on this when the company just decided to back the development manager at the time, who was making it a big deal, and the executives were like, oh yeah, cool, Mr. Development Manager, go do what you, patting a little kid on the head and sending them back out on the soccer field. Go do what you want to do. We'll support you. But they didn't train anyone because they didn't know what it was. They didn't really care. They're like, whatever, just keep making software, keep punching out cogs.
So no requirements and no documentation means they didn't know when they were done, and they didn't know what they had done.
No, they didn't know anything.
Excellent.
But
what could go wrong?
But that's why the rest of the organization, all the leads, all the project managers, all the business people, all the people that relied on the development department, all got a real bad taste in their mouth for the word agile, because that's the way it was rolled out in that organization.
Right. So they're the ones that probably, leading the charge with, Agile doesn't work for us.
Right.
Right. And then they bring in somebody who really wants to make a change later on, and they're always saying the same thing.
And clarify to them what really agile could be, not the dirty word that they were given before that was nowhere near what it could have been.
Yeah.
And I've been in that organization too. That can't work for us. Like it can work for just about anybody. You weren't doing it.
Sometimes they say, well, we tried that a couple of years ago. It didn't work for us. I'm like, you really didn't do it
You didn't.
right.
Yeah, you didn't. You did some weird combination of some change, but it was not agile.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's your fixed mindset leadership right there. I tried to do something once and it didn't work. Therefore, I will never be successful
works.
at that ever at all ever again. Yeah. Don't want to hear how ridiculous that statement is applied to literally anything else. I tried to drive in Cincinnati once, and it was a real terror, so I can't drive ever again. The two topics I have left, which is not hiring because they were supposed to be tied in with the management topics that we were talking about. Maybe I'll give you the preface and you can think about it for a second. I've seen both of these situations, which is I don't want to hire a PO because they don't have any domain experience in my tiny niche domain that really isn't as complicated.
You're never going to find it.
Yeah, that it really isn't as complicated as I think it is, but like anybody can learn. But because of my crazy fixed mindset or my sheer arrogance, I don't think anyone could. Oh, you've never worked in insurance. And then the other one is we can't hire a Scrum Master because they don't have any technical background. They've never been a programmer or never been a QA engineer or whatever. It's like, why would I hire it? Why would I? Yeah,
Brian.
I know. We can't hire Scrum Masters because they don't have any technical experience. They don't have a technical background. They wouldn't understand. We're doing API development. That's smart work. I'm laying it on super thick, but I've heard both these cases come out of real people's mouths.
Sure. Absolutely.
And even job postings for the Scrum Master specifically say, the Scrum Master needs to have 7 years of development experience and no HTML and this and that. I'm like, what for? They're not the ones that are going to be doing the work. I don't have to know anything about the technology that the team, and most teams that I've worked with, I didn't. I do not have to touch the code. I have an understanding of what you're attempting to achieve, but my job is not there to get you to code or develop. My job is to help you actually produce and alleviate anything that would come in the way of you doing that. I'm not there to do coding. Why do I need it?
Those job descriptions are sometimes written by people that
They have no idea.
are or have been developers. And they feel like, okay, this is what we need. We need somebody who speaks our language and they understand HTML or whatever ML, right? Or whatever language.
One. We need someone who can speak the language.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah, and they need to know how to develop, but they don't actually know how to be a Scrum Master.
Yes. Yeah, that sums it up. Well, thanks for listening to the Agile Podcast. That's the end of our podcast.
It's the end of the snippet, because soon there will be no light.
I'm not really looking for a Scrum Master. I'm looking for another developer. I would expect companies like this that have that mindset of, well, I can't hire a Scrum Master. They have no value because they won't understand how to read code, and they don't like. What we're doing requires big brains. That's the same reason that you get that same attitude of we don't need to, I was going to say arrogant attitude, but I'm trying not to use the word. That same arrogant attitude of like, we don't need a Scrum Master. We can just have one of our developers on the team play the role. Mm-hmm. They can play.
Well, I think it's the same of what Om said before. They don't understand what it is or how to do it. So they think, well, we can just fill that role. They can be a developer and we'll call them a Scrum Master.
Tell them to get on a plane and say, we don't need a pilot. Anyone can just push and, it's just like driving a car, really.
Yeah, anyone can set up an event. It's fine.
Anybody can coach a sports team to victory.
Exactly.
Our team would have won if it wasn't for,
the coach.
That one person. Or the coach this week. Next week it's going to be that one player, and next week after that it's going to be the kicker, and a week after that it's going to be the water boy or whatever. Yeah, that's right, the water boy. I'm just waiting for the lights to go off.
So on this topic, I would say this, right? Strictly speaking, you really don't need a Scrum Master who can read code or anything like that. There's only ever been one time in my professional career where being able to read code has been advantageous, and that was in a pinch. The product owner was always going to the devs for certain things, but doing it properly, right? That was my role, to make sure they don't just simply go in and say, hey, can I have this? Mm-hmm. But then there was a trade show, and the trade show really needed something that the salespeople asked him for, and it was like, now. We need it now. And the developers are all busy. Now, sure, we could have taken a developer off whatever they were doing, but all they were really looking for is some data, some sort of pie chart from the database, right? That extract the data that gives us the top 10 of XYZ. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't want to disturb a developer. They're already busy. I could do that. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead and did that and extract that information, stuck it in Excel, drew a pie chart, and like, here you go. Is that what you want? Yep, screenshot of that and send it to me. Well, that was it. So it took a few minutes, but it would have taken the developer probably less because they know how to write SQL. I kind of know. Yeah. It's not very elegant when I write it, but it does the job. Right. So that came in handy. But it's like a one-off. And if I didn't know any of that, I still would have been fine. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you need those things. People that write those JDs really need to rethink how they're doing that. You'll never find, I'm sorry. I was going to say you'll never find what they really need as skill sets to bring to the table. Servant leadership, empathy. You'll never find those words in there. You'll find these other ones because they're more tangible. They're understood by people writing it. They know HTML. They know SQL Server and all that stuff. You don't need that.
Yeah, well, you don't need it until you need it. Like, you don't need facilitation skills until you realize that all your meetings are horrible.
Yeah, facilitation skills, absolutely.
You don't realize you need somebody with some kind of conflict resolution skills and or a high EQ until you realize that you got teams that just won't work together because you fight all the time. Yeah. Because they're button heads because you hired all these air quotes rock stars.
I did actually see a posting at one point in time that said they wanted a degree in an equivalent business area or psychology. And I said, now this company gets it. They understand the role of the Scrum Master. Half of your job is being a therapist for the team and understanding how people work, how people are motivated. They got it. I don't remember the company though, but it was nice to see that somebody out there is recognizing it.
Yeah, good on you. One person.
Yeah, it was one out of the hundreds that I've seen out there, because everything else is 3 years of such and such and ridiculous amounts of development experience.
Now would be the time that I go back to my normal. I can solve this for most companies. You just take the Scrum Master out from underneath development's budget and put it wherever product lives, along with all of your resources that do testing, and you've solved with a financial budgetary red pen. You've solved most of your problems.
Yeah, the likelihood of that happening though are slim to none.
I get it.
Slim just left.
I understand.
Yeah,
agreed.
That's why we're going to do a whole episode on the Deming system. The 14 points. Mm-hmm. We'll go point by point. I don't care. We'll go 4 hours.
That'll be a long episode, man.
Don't care.
It's fine.
Worth it.
It'll be worth it.
It'll help me.
So about hiring POs with no domain knowledge. There's pros and cons to that, but mainly pros, I think, because if you had domain knowledge, it means you were steeped in that sphere, right? And so now you've got that blinker view of that domain. You can't think outside the box.
Yeah.
Somebody new coming in is going to go, why do we do things that way? Whereas somebody who was from within the domain would say, that's what we do. We've always done it that way. So there is nothing else because they can't see the alternates, right? So I think that's a factor to consider. As long as you have a mindset, a product mindset that you have to produce something that is valued by your customers. If you have that mindset, I don't think you need to be an expert in the domain. There are people that know the stuff, or you can pick up stuff over time. Yeah. But that's my view.
Well, I could say that in the instance where it is highly regulated or there is an industry specific, it would be helpful to have a product owner that is familiar with it.
Sure.
Only in the sense of if there is financial ramifications or other things that it might be a risk to the organization. Not to say that they couldn't pick it up, but I could see where they would think that they would need somebody that has that specialized experience.
I see where you're coming from. So is that a product owner more than like a product manager? Because the product manager would be the one that would worry about the financial viability of a line of products, right? Or a given product. They know what the market need is. They know what it costs the company to produce a product. They know and forecast the profitability of that and ROI, all of that goes with it. Whereas a product owner is really helping the product manager bring it to life. So I'm not sure where the domain knowledge fits in. Is it with the product manager? That's assuming that the
organization has both the product manager.
Well, that's a great topic for another podcast, though.
Yeah, because I've been in areas where it was the product owner that was doing the decisions of what is the feasibility, what are we going to get dinged with if we do not get this out by such and such time, and making the decisions of we have to get X, Y, and Z out before all of these others because we are going to be fined by state government, etc. In that situation. So for that reason, it might be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. So I think in that example, the product owner is acting as the product manager also.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. So
fulfilling the role, not necessarily, and has the responsibilities, not necessarily a separate role.
So in that case, I agree. Absolutely.
I tend to think the PM/PO, like in smaller organizations, the product manager and product owner are the same person, but at some point when the organization grows, they need to naturally divide because the responsibilities of each different position are at different levels in the organization. Like one stays with the development team or teams. If you divide and you get a bunch of development teams, and the PM can no longer do strategic work and all the tactical level stuff anymore. It's just too busy, too much stuff to do. Because I was in that position at a small company. I had 3 teams when I started. So I say 3 teams, but really it's 3 development teams plus the leadership team. I would argue as well, like Scrum Masters are in the position as well, although a lot of Scrum Masters don't realize that they should be empowered and they should have this authority where their other shadow team is the leadership team, the team they have to leverage to work with to get organizational system problems dealt with in addition to the other teams. So whatever load they carry that in addition to their responsibilities to and with the leadership team.
Or is part of their responsibility. Like the latest Scrum Guide says that you're supposed to be coaching the organization. It's part of your...
Right. I mean, my point was like the larger organizations will have a chief product officer or somebody maybe they're not even in the C-suite. Maybe they are.
CMO maybe?
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Or it could be rolled under another function, but they might have a chief product person, who's basically and that chief product person could deploy product managers in very large scaled organizations. You'll have directors of product basically, and they will employ either product managers under them or product managers and product owners, and that's kind of how they scale. But the key responsibilities that pull apart is finding more customers, finding more business problems, finding more business objectives, trying to take high-level roadmap, like what I think of as epics, right? Super high-level roadmap items, trying to take them, figure out what they really mean, how we want to not implement them, but like the problems that we're trying to solve as a company, high level. And maybe even dipping into like how we want to measure what our success looks like. A bit of that should also be coming from product management as well. But then when the product owner takes it, you start getting into low level details, estimation, forecasting, stuff like that. You can't really get that without your product owner activities, your backlog refinements, your being 2-3 sprints out ahead with your backlog, your creation of acceptance criteria, all the stuff you do with the team, backlog in the team. That's where the division of responsibility is to me. And I would also say that the PM role is a discovery role, the PO role is a delivery role, and I've said this before, the skills to do discovery and the skills to do delivery, they are not the same skill set.
Yep.
Yeah, so I've seen many people who are in organizations or teams that are obviously trying to do both, that are failing at one or the other, and they just seem like they're flailing to everybody, but it's because the organization is asking them to do a skill outside of their skill set,
right,
and they're not reacting well.
Well, I completely agree with what you're just saying. Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, those organizations don't know what they're doing to, to bring this to bear. I mean, they don't know what it needs to fix it.
Well, I mean,
we've already got someone, they say.
Yeah. Brian's doing it.
Yeah.
He seems fine.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah, in my instance with the 3 teams where I was a product manager and a product owner. Yeah, I had 3 teams. They were like, he's doing fine. And then they're like, he's doing so fine, in fact, that we're going to direct more money and bring on 2 more teams. Now we got 5 teams. And I'm like, guys, like you just killed, like I'm dead.
And then you said, hey, how about you bring in this other Scrum Master named Caurie?
That was
That was after you had like 7 teams, 8 teams.
Now that you mention it, I've done that more than once because I was thinking of a completely different program. The problem I had in one program was what you can think of as like the chief product level, what should be leadership level in product. They would start taking the roadmap from the leadership team and building it to working with the teams and building it to their vision, right? They had a vision, they had a roadmap. They started developing, they started feeding features to the team, even arguably if those features were good or not, doesn't really matter in this example. And the team started delivering. And then leadership would radically change what they wanted, and then product would kind of just, since they valued their jobs and their salaries at the end of the day, they kind of wouldn't say no. And they would just be like, all right, team, it's time to change everything. Wipe away your backlogs. We're starting on brand new stuff. They did that like 3 times over the course of a year, and I'm like, guys, you can't run a program this way. If you're gonna bill yourself as the product guy, that visionary Steve Jobs wannabe, you know where I'm going with this? Like that's why you're like, oh, it's drink time. And like if you're gonna bill yourself as that guy to your leadership, like, oh, just give it to me. Like you have to stand up when the leadership's like, yeah, I was taking I'm getting super close. I was taking a shower this morning and I came up with this idea. Sorry, this is my executive voice. I didn't even know. Instead of making green widgets, we should make pink widgets because pink is fun. So if you were going to be Steve Jobs, you need to be like, why? What customer's asking for that? What metrics make you believe that pink widgets instead of green widgets are the way to go? And what makes you think we should cease all of our work up until now that we've put a lot of work into getting our sprints 2-3 sprints out, getting our backlog 2-3 sprints out? What makes you think that? On that program, not going to happen. Not going to question. Those program people were in those positions because they're like, this position, I want to be in product. This is the way to be, man. Like, ooh,
just say yes to
product
everything.
is the way of the future. Yeah. Leadership just tells you what to do, and you turn around and repeat that to the team. This job is easy.
Yeah. Steve Jobs wouldn't say why pink. He'd say, let's make a 3-dimensional, multicolored, psychedelic one because people don't know what they want. So we're going to give them something new. And hence the iPod was born. Nobody thought about that, carrying all that music with them, and he did. So anyway, we digress, because we often do.
Yeah, well, this is how teams get into the mode of becoming feature factories. I was going to say weak leadership, but I was trying to polish it to be nicer than that. I don't know why.
Suboptimal leadership. It's still weak, mind you.
No, that's the PM's job. Like if you're going to be in the job of the PM and someone brings you a request, it doesn't matter who they are.
Hey, no.
It doesn't matter who they are. You're the one who is tasked by the organization of digging for the evidence first. Because you can look at the best products, you have to figure out how you're going to measure those features before you punch them in. Because if you just throw features in without any regard for how you're going to know whether you're headed in the right direction or not, like what are you doing at that point? You can say that you're Steve Jobs, like, oh, I'm the next Steve Jobs. I don't have to adjust myself to you.
You're bleeding money. You're not a leader. You're a bleeder at that point.
That's my bumper sticker. That's so weird.
Is it even possible that, they won't always have the ability to do that research and know whether or not a feature is going to be valuable? I mean, not always. So,
what do you mean?
So they're not always going to, yes, they have to do the analysis to say, is this even going to be viable? Does the user want it? Does it actually provide value to the customer or anyone? But they might not always know that if it's outlandish or they haven't done it before. So there could be an instance where a feature is a test case to say, well, let's do a small piece of it, push it through, see what happens, see if it's valuable.
Just like the iPod example.
Exactly.
Or the new disruptive technologies, right?
Right. Try a little bit of it. Don't go full-fledged, but I think it's unfair to tell a product owner for every feature you got to figure out, because that's not possible for everything.
I agree with you. This is my yes end. This is my yes end.
Yeah.
I agree with you. However, the way that you go about that, the discovery process, is you build the smallest tiny MVP
that's what I'm
possible.
saying. Do the smallest bit.
But then when you build the smallest MVP possible, you have to see if your users like it, or what your users like about it, right? And then extend on what they like and kind of dial back or fix what they don't like. That's all discovery. The Marty Kagan 4 pieces of discovery. You already talked about feasibility. That was one of the things you talked like. Is this even something that the market, or maybe it's viability? Is this even something that the market will accept?
Sure.
Right. Viability, feasibility, because you could be talking about building, whatever, some giant solution. But if it's not completely outlandish, I want to go to Mars tomorrow. Like, come on.
I was just thinking about Elon Musk when you said that.
Grow up. Usability and value. Like the value one, if you're truly launching something new and you're not sure about how you're going to evidence your prototype, you should at least be sure about 2 of these categories, I would think. Like at least 2 of these you should be able to say, I'm certain there's a value in this, and I'm certain that it's viable in the market today.
Or I have an maybe not certain. I don't know that you could be certain. You have an idea that it would be accepted or viable or valuable. Yeah. And that's why you would do your MVP to even test out if your hypothesis is valid and if you should even go further. Yeah.
The other thing for discovery is when you're prototyping, you should, even if you're not sure about something, like let's say you're completely taking a risk on something. You know what I mean? You're not even sure about, maybe you're only sure about one thing. I know there's users that need this. Maybe you build software for one particular type of user, or maybe you're a B2B company and you see something in the consumer market that you want to build an app for that you're sure there's a need for, or maybe all the apps in that market. I just was talking about this with somebody in the product space. A B2B company. I was in a B2B company one time. I recited my experience in this instance. That's where it came from. About being a B2B only company and writing B2C software for the first time. And I talked to them about my experience doing that and about what we learned by just falling flat on our face like 100% of the time. Because in a B2B company, you're solving businesses' problems. And when you solve businesses' problems, I'm going to say it's easier, but I'm not 100% certain if I'm going to stand behind my statement of it's easier to write B2B software. You're trying to make the person happy that pays the bills for the software. The person that pays the bills for the software may not ever touch the software, use it, look at it, care about if the users like it or not. So that's why that's how I'm gonna put a star and justify my it's easier. Direct to consumer software is like, you get one shot, man. They don't like it.
Well, all right. So I'm going to lean in here a little bit. Okay?
Yeah,
so
please,
some of the times that B2B category also is just as critical to nail. It's not like you can just say it doesn't matter. I'll give you an example. This Square payment system, that's a B2B, right? The customer pays. They're going to pay anyway, no matter how. But if they got that wrong, then no business will subscribe to it, right? If it was error prone or delayed or whatever. So they still have to nail it. But what they did is they figured out, and I think this is true of anything new really, you have to figure out, A, is there a need in the marketplace? And then B, what is the potential for you to succeed with your solution? So there may be some other competitive offerings out there, and then you have to position yours against that and see. Sometimes there aren't any. Like for example, when Uber came out, I mean, taxis were already around, but they came out with a different model.
Yeah.
But Airbnb, you could say, well, hotels are always around, but you try and get like a hotel will just give you a room typically, unless you spend so much money and upgrade to a suite. Whereas Airbnb, you get to use the kitchen and maybe the living room,
Laundry.
that kind of stuff. Yeah, the laundry, all the furnishings are there. The kitchen's equipped most times. So for a specific type of traveler, that is actually more enticing than just a room with four walls. And then they grew from there quickly to our market isn't just the business traveler. It's anybody. You could be taking a vacation with your family. B2B, you still have to nail that niche, whatever niche you're trying to fulfill, right? You can't just say this is business to business, right? And so it's not so critical to, have a polished product out there because you can fall flat on your face otherwise.
Yeah, but my kind of counterpoint to that is in direct to consumer type of B2C environment, you have to spend a lot more upfront time making sure that your work on the UX is solid, much more than in any B2B software that I've ever worked. Just my experience working directly on that software has been like that. When we moved into the consumer market with one company I was at, we had to hire a UX person. Actually, after we failed and we delivered a terrible UX and had 1-star app ratings, then the company was like,
No, I guess we should have hired.
Maybe we should have. Maybe we do have the budget
I like
mid-year for a UX
our
person.
voices are pretty much the same for those people.
Again, there's no budget in the yearly budget,
right?
Until our app gets 1-star in the store, and then now there's a budget.
Surprise!
Where do we find this?
It's that burning need. It's burning now.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I think you do have to make sure that the UI side of things is. It's critical in the B2C for sure. You have more eyes on it.
So I read the discovery aspects: value, usability, feasibility, viability. I read the 4 parts of discovery: part of prototyping, figuring out, measuring your responses, and then adjusting to figure out what to build. And then when you give it to your teams to deal with building it, again, we're in the Marty Kagan school of thought, so there's like a little bit of magic, a little stardust in here to make this happen. Reliability, scalability, performance, and maintainability. Maintainability is probably the in bold, right? Those are his 4 categories, which are pretty good categories, for delivery. Out of all of the software teams that I've been on, maintainability is probably their number 1 out of that category, with reliability next to it. And then scalability and performance are like, that's somebody else's job down the line. Maybe
those
pass along
don't make
it.
Just along with security oftentimes.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. What did we get on the topic of product? About this, we got on this because we were talking about
hiring PMs without domain.
And then you said PMs versus POs and
PMs
like the
POs.
roles.
Yeah, well, like one person is going to be taking care of all this. One person is going to be working with the discovery part is the product management role in a B2C company. Like, what do you have? Workshops of like groups of users, beta users,
focus groups.
Yeah, I'm thinking like more dirty BA tricks is where we're going with this one. we talked that last episode. We talked about like how to get people's time when you're in a large organization, or maybe only your part of the organization is agile and the rest of the organization is whatever. And Om and I just started rattling off all kinds of ways to just steal people's time. Like, go to the coffee machine and wait on them. Wait outside their office.
Oh, yeah.
Walk them out to their car.
All the stalking tactics.
Yeah, stalking tactics.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But positive stalking tactics.
I love Fred's quote. If you're not getting a restraining order from people, you're not doing the Scrum Master job.
Makes total sense to me. The key thing right there for Scrum Masters is they don't realize, especially if they're more junior or if they're in the role that we were talking about where they don't have technical domain experience or whatever, so maybe they feel imposter syndrome, then maybe they are not embracing the fact that, like, in order to be a change agent, like, your teams are the development team that you're working with, and like you need to interface with leadership to have them do their job to help you. We need a tagline. We need like a party line or something I can keep parroting over and over and over again on the podcast about leadership's job is XYZ. Like a very clear sentence of what is leadership's
So you can
job.
look dead into the camera and say it over and over.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Get you like a playboard so with all the
I'll just pop
all
it
the
up.
Brian quotes.
I'll just pop it up in the middle of the screen, like whenever we say the same thing over and over again. It'll be like playing a clip.
Is it you need more cowbell, foghorn?
Yeah, like
you
people
need
that
the
have those buttons. They hit the button and the button
like on
does the
radio.
sound.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a challenge to the viewers. Let us know a tagline, potential tagline that you come up with for what a leadership's job is. That for both of you watching out there.
Yes, for two of you watching or listening.
Or listening.
Okay, well that was some nerdery right there. Let me wrap up the product management, product owner topics. When I was a product manager and product owner at the same time, a small company, like I've said many times before, I tried to have my utilization set to 50-50. 50% of the time was doing my discovery work, and 50% of the time was doing my team level delivery work. Mm-hmm. And of course, I was never anywhere near 50-50.
70-70.
Yes. 70. I almost said last time 70-60, and I was like, I got to keep that in. But it was probably closer to like 85% was delivery mode and like 15% was, what I mean? It would have been nicer to...
True for most.
Yeah, it would have been nicer not to be so stuck in team mode all the time. Mm-hmm. Oh, another product question that somebody asked me recently? I swear to God, I'm going to stop talking here in a second. Just give me 20 seconds and I'm done. As a product person, how do you make the choice to put more money into an existing piece of your software, feature of your software, versus writing a new feature? I thought that was a good question.
That's a good question.
Because I was like, that's not something I get asked every day.
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to figuring out what is hurting you the most. Are your current customers that upset about this feature that's not working that they will ditch your product and go somewhere else? You better fix that. As opposed to this shiny new thing that you want with a potential revenue of X.
Shiny
right?
is cool.
Right. Yeah, but
Shiny's cool.
Not when you have screaming customers. So, yeah. This is why product people get paid the big bucks.
Yeah. I have no interest in product stuff.
Really?
Yeah. All Scrum Mastery.
I think you'd be good at
and
product.
Agile. In certain aspects. In certain areas, in certain aspects, I can be. The concepts and everything behind it,
Concepts.
All the concepts you're talking right now.
Product people just making a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, they just make up stuff. Go do this. Yeah, that's all.
It's all.
All my product experience was years and years of a backlog of stuff that had just been sitting there chilling, and then figuring out how to reorganize it and how to barrel through what we could and what we were going to kill. Because it wasn't new discovery. It wasn't the new flashy whatever. It was, how do we dig through this backlog of stuff that's been here for 10 to 12 years? That was more of my product. So streamlining and efficiencies of what can we do and how can we get it done, not your visionary type of style. So
but I would expect that's most teams though. Like they're just like handed down stuff, be like,
it's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
That's why I like product, because I like pushing back to be like, we don't need to do this. Like, this bug's been open for 3 years. Nobody cares.
This backlog that's been there for 10 years, here's how we're going to deal with it. right now.
And half
What
of
do we
it,
miss?
half of it. But in the organization, it wasn't that these things were no longer valuable. There was one team to work on the backlog of maybe 5 to 6 people that have been working there for however, like a very long time. And they didn't have the capacity to do most of these things because everything was regulation. This is the next thing that we have to do. So all this stuff just kept building. So we finally started to chip away at the stuff that was older and bringing value to the organization. And when we actually did the Agile transformation, they were so impressed with how we were picking up stuff that was 16 years old and even just giving them a little bit of it. Mm-hmm. But again, how do you go through this backlog and say, you had to talk to every single requester, if they were still there, thankfully most of them were, and figure out which one was actually going to still provide value and what little pieces could we give them, and balance that with all of these mandatory changes that the team had to do. That was my product experience.
Yikes.
Yeah,
I can see why you don't want to.
So that's why I'm like, hands off.
I mean, it probably mirrors why I don't want to be a Scrum Master anymore. Where I'm like, oh, Scrum Master, I just have no interest.
And I'm on the other end, like, give me a team with problems any day, behavioral, like all sorts of nonsense, and I will gladly go in and help them through it. But yeah,
I could easily be convinced that, like, give it another shot going as a Scrum Master. The most successful I've ever been as a Scrum Master was when I was partnered directly with the executives, and I had development teams. Because then when my team suggested something, came up through retrospectives, and I walked the executives through retrospect, like, these are things bubbling up from the teams, because I had an executive level retrospective. It was, I called it a program retrospective.
Yeah.
It was an executive team retrospective.
Right.
So they didn't know that. But I was like, here are the things that I'm bringing from the teams to you, the leadership, that we need solved. Systemic or organizational things, or strategic things that we're not clear about. And then I would kind of help them facilitate them through, do their retrospective, figure out where they're going to go, and they would have their little deliverables they would take amongst themselves, the executive team, and push forward. And after that, I got a bad taste in my mouth for even trying to do it any other way. I'm like, people who are not doing this, who are not interfacing with leadership to help leadership deal with their problems, you're just wasting time, man. Like,
but that's the assumption that the leadership is even willing to help and make any other changes. Because I was in that situation where it was the team wanted the changes, and anytime we brought them up, it was, well, that's just not how we're going to do things here. So yeah, that wasn't a great Scrum Master experience.
Well, I'm all about not great Scrum Master experiences. Wrap us up, man. Like,
all right, so you've heard a whole plethora of things today.
Yeah.
Let us know what resonates with you, and let us know what you'd like us to talk about.
everything went wrong in this podcast.
You're welcome.